All right. So as I said in the introduction to the mod when I did the big README, I got really, really lucky in looking for what version of FF6 I wanted to play. I played the SNES version a bunch of times. I didn't really find myself that interested in the Pixel Remaster. So just to see some stray Reddit comments saying, honestly, since I tried the Brave New World mod, that's just my definitive experience, and people agreeing with him. I got really, really lucky to encounter that and to look into it because it really, really appeals to my exact way of approaching RPGs, which is to kind of really thoughtfully put together a team where people have like true niches, which really, really gets at what was always some of the main criticisms of Final Fantasy VI, which is, by the way, one of my favorite games. Like one of the first games I ever encountered as a kid that I really wanted to play. And 14 characters, two of them sort of secret, but that's a lot of different people to try to make work. And essentially, the original game is all the espers, which are things that you equip to learn spells, were available to every single person. And there was this really kind of fiddly, stupid min-maxing of trying to make sure people had the right espers equipped for when they level up to get the right stats. And apparently, like, very few of the actual four main stats, which are vigor, speed, stamina, and magic, were actually useful. And then magic just trumped everything because it scaled with so many things. So to go through the README and to look at the ways that they try to make different characters not only be able to specialize in different things, but they've also changed a lot of the scaling so that some healing spells scale with stamina, so you have some sort of supportive paladin-style tanks. And they just, everything, it just really, really, really appealed to me. And if you, especially since so many of these games are made for kids, right? You have to consider when people are making these games in the 90s, not only were like Japanese companies sometimes like, okay, we need to make this more accessible for Americans, stupid Americans, but also the games are for kids, right? And not everyone finishes everything, so you want it to be a pleasant experience. So for like ridiculous gamer no-lifers like me, like you, to finally have a version of this where it is pretty brutal. Like, I'm not gonna lie, when I played this mod, I didn't expect the game to take me... I mean, I think my official playtime count was like 44 hours or something like that, not including like 4 hours of failing the Kefka fight, because I refused to like back out and re-equip my guys to try to get the right 4 members. So it's always pretty close to 50 hours all told. And, like, I'm not gonna lie, I spent a lot of the time a little bit fatigued by it. Like, there's a lot of spells I never end up using, but even the random normal encounters can be really punishing and like quite exacting. Across the board, I would say that like just spell damage from random normal monsters is pretty crazy. I would say that party members got killed over 100 times probably over the course of the full playthrough. I probably got wiped over a dozen times, maybe even more by the end, because the Kefka fight I wasn't like adjusting to, and just throwing different random groups of 4 people in there and seeing what was going to happen and getting kind of mad about it. But generally speaking, like, you have to try pretty hard. And for some dungeons, like the ones that are pretty repetitive, like Umaro's Den, where you fall through the holes and have to redo the thing, had a pretty high encounter rate. So that's the Caves of Narsh. There's some other places, there's some other dungeons I did over the course of the game where the sheer amount of random battles as you kind of go through, I know they're apparently limited, but with the random battles being pretty punishing, obviously it's way better to have punishing random battles rather than just be holding A to spam the fight command like you probably would if you're playing FF6 the original time. Like, those things, oh look, this tree fell down. That's crazy. So all the times that I would get frustrated, I would eventually grudgingly be like, okay, this is actually so well balanced, because there's a lot of pretty complicated systems in the game, and they make it exacting. You know what I mean? Like, they make it so you, like, really can see the ways that different builds and different stat changes can really affect your characters. Like, watch, like, a Cyan with Vigor tank so much more damage and be able to be so much more, have such better defenses than someone who doesn't have a lot. Watch adding, like, 25% more HP to Terra, allow her to be, like, durable enough to actually be able to get through the final fight and still continue her outstanding offensive output. So I think they did such a good job with this mod, honestly, for making it like a really, really, really tight experience. It's going to be too hard for some people, but just any single fight, a lot of the frustration for me came from the fact that I hadn't done it before. I didn't know I had to be prepared for it. Suddenly there's some boss fight. Some of them, like Dataluma and Zozo, was crazy. That was probably the hardest fight in the entire game. It took forever, and you have to learn some real mechanics. Some people in the forums were like, well, this is really where the game opens up, right? This is the first, like, true test. But that fight was crazy. Ultima in Kefka's Tower was a crazy fight. Atma Weapon was kind of hard. I think there's a couple others. But generally speaking, a lot of the frustration comes from the fact that, like, well, you're not prepared for this, and you're not geared for it. So the first time through a mod, it's obviously going to feel pretty punishing. Like, yesterday, I spent 4 hours smashing my face into, like, the final fight of the game. 4 hours. Just getting frustrated and not changing anything and just expecting it to work out. But then I had dinner. Within 5 or 10 minutes of making dinner, I'm like, wait a minute, like, you have safe, you have shell, you have different equipment, you can actually choose which 4 party members you want to use. For me, it felt like the most offensive output was Terra and Locke with the Excalibur. So take those 2 and then take 2 people to protect them, which would be like Sabin and Edgar with hero rings. And I was like, okay, great, this will be perfect. Those 2 can look after those 2. And then what happens at the second phase of the 4-phase boss fights, 3 of them get killed, except for Terra. Randomly, Realm, Setzer, and Shadow come in, which is pretty lucky to get 3 people to get in. And then I can actually finish Kefka on my first try after that. All it took was like a little backup, a little kind of shake your head a little bit, and to kind of use some strategy, and it always works out. So it shows that I think it's so well developed. They also redid the script in the World of Ruin. The World of Ruin is a much more serious part of the game. I think they did a really, really good job in keeping that, like, epic, mythical, portentous feel. A lot of the rewrites and a lot of the dialogue in the World of Ruin really matches well. In the World of Balance, I try to have a little more fun, and it's kind of like bordering on, like, edgy gamer, a little bit sophomoric at times, so it gets a bit cringy. But they really nailed it in the World of Ruin, because the World of Ruin is so much more serious, and they did a great job with that. FF6 has always been one of my favorite games, and so to have a tight, punishing experience matches the way this game should be, which is that it's like it's a dark, serious game with a huge storyline. You know what I mean? Like, it's really, really epic. So to actually have it be something where Kefka's Tower, start to finish, took me probably 8 hours. I skipped and jumped into Sunday 2 days ago, being like, okay, well, time to wrap up Kefka's Tower. I'll do this in about 3 hours today. Boy, was I wrong. So I was kind of exhausted. I can't say that I was, like, exultant and feeling glorious by the time I beat Kefka, just because I was a little worn thin from how long it took. But that's so much better than the alternative, which is kind of classic mentality where something's too hard until you beat it, and then it's too easy, lol. You know what I mean? So I'm just overall really impressed with this. I'm so glad I found it. And then if you ever liked FF6 and you do like a challenge, you like to be kind of thoughtful about how you construct an RPG party and really have to choose not just whatever thing has the most armor or defense, but to actually really be thoughtful about what gear and stats you want to specialize per character so that people feel different, I would really recommend this. I think it's totally worth it. I think it's the best. I'm not terribly experienced in this category, but I think it would be very, very difficult for me to ever find a sort of, like, rebalancing of a classic 90s JRPG that does a better job than this. It's really, really impressive. Especially sort of changing the espers, where at max, I don't know how many espers there are, maybe 30, something like that, 25, 30, around that range. At max, some of the more magically adept characters can use 5 or 6 of them to get about, I don't know, 12 or 14 or 20 spells. But some of them, like Shadow, Cyan, Gao, some of these guys can only get 3 from the entire game. So they have a very limited amount of spells, but everyone has utility, everyone has purpose, and you really, really see the ways that different characters have different specialities. I think it's fantastic. I'm so lucky that I found this. And again, if you ever like FF6, you should really, really try doing this. Okay, thanks. Bye. Earthbound next.